Welcome to this video, which is all about connotations and how talking about connotations can enhance your analysis in English. This could be for both GCSE and A-level. So to begin with, what is a connotation? You might be familiar with this word already, but a connotation is all to do with interpretation. It's an interpretation that a word gives you. It is a meaning that could be suggested. Often what students do or what our brains do is they will connect a word to a particular image or idea that they have in their brains, and that will help them interpret what the writer is saying. It can be something that a word reminds you of, or it can be used as a way to help you understand why that particular word has been chosen in the context of what is being described. So there's usually a reason why that word has been used, because it's got something to do with what the writer is talking about. So to give you three examples, we have here words punishment, roaring, and attacking. All of these are fairly common words, and I've just given some images here of what might come into your head if you think of these words. If you were to draw an image for these words, this is what you might draw. Underneath, with the bullet points, I have collected a selection of words and phrases which could be the connotation of that word. So the connotations of the word roaring, for example, could be something that is powerful or loud or quite predatory, like a lion or some kind of big cat. Punishment is also negative in terms of connotations, and it could make you think of somebody that is imprisoned or trapped and having a lack of freedom. And attacking could come across as quite vicious or powerful. The connotation here being somebody perhaps with some kind of whip or other instrument which is designed to cause pain in a quite a brutal way. So the connotations here are the bullet points underneath. What words, what associations we make relating to a particular word that comes up in an extract. So in order to practice connotations in more detail in relation to a particular extract, I want us first to look at these four objects. We have a tank, we have a soldier, we have a monster, and we have a metal rod. And before we go any further, because I often get students to draw these objects first, is to think about what connotations do these objects have. So all of these objects come with connotations attached to them, characteristics that these objects have associated with them. So you can pause the video now and think about what comes into your head when you think of these four things, or you can continue watching and we can go through some possible ideas. And here we have some ideas. So usually when students think of the connotations of the noun tank, they think of things like war and conflict, something that's quite destructive or large or powerful. For a soldier, they think of something that is brave and strong or decisive, something that might march in a very regimented way, but something that can also be quite dangerous. They have guns, of course, and can cause death relatively quickly. Monsters could be, create connotations of something that's quite scary or grotesque or malevolent, which is a nice word, or something that lacks compassion. And a metal rod, obviously because it's metal, can be quite strong and quite brutal, but it's also relatively unfeeling. It does not have feelings, for example, because it is not alive. So for this activity in relation to the extract I'm about to show you, I will often ask students to think about the connotations of these objects before we go any further, because the next step is to actually look at an extract which contains all four of these objects in relation to the description of a particular character. And what we're talking about here is Roald Dahl, and we're talking about the character of Miss Trunchbull, who comes from the very famous book Matilda, and the film from the late 90s. So this is how Miss Trunchbull is introduced to the story by Roald Dahl. And you can see I've highlighted in yellow here all of these objects which we were just talking about feature in this extract, which is why I asked students to focus on those 4 objects in particular, as a way of working out what the writer is trying to say about this character, because there's a reason why the writer has chosen these objects to compare to Miss Trunchbull. So it says Miss Trunchbull, the headmistress, was something else altogether. She was a gigantic holy terror, a fierce tyrannical monster, who frightened the life out of pupils and teachers alike. There was an aura of menace about her, even at a distance, and when she came up close you could almost feel the dangerous heat radiating from her, as if from a piece of red-hot metal. When she marched, she never walked. She always marched like a stormtrooper, with long strides and arms swinging. When she marched along a corridor, you could actually hear her snorting as she went, and if a group of children happened to be in her path, she ploughed right on through them like a tank, with small people bouncing off her to left and right. So the question before we go further is, what is the writer saying about Miss Trunchbull? What is the writer trying to tell us about this character without telling us directly? Instead, the writer is telling us indirectly through likening her to these particular objects or these nouns, these things. So in doing that, what is the writer saying about her? And the answer to that will be probably something to do with the connotations that these highlighted words have. So in class, I and other teachers often show clips of Miss Trunchbull, played by the wonderful Pam Ferris in 1996, I think it was. Deliberately made to look very, very scary. She's actually a very lovely lady. So this is how she's depicted in the film. You might have seen the film. But we can also broaden out our analysis here to think about the actual devices. We've got a selection of metaphors and similes because the character is being compared to these things using those 2 devices. So I've broadened out the analysis here to include more of those words. And this means you can actually talk about the verb marched as well. You can talk about the verb ploughed, even though I haven't highlighted it here. You could talk about the adjective tyrannical or the adjective fierce. So you can broaden out these quotes and think about other words which are included in that particular piece of evidence. So the reason, to cut a long story short, the reason why the writer has used these objects, these nouns, to describe Miss Trunchbull is because of the connotations we discussed earlier. This is what the writer wanted us to think about this character. The writer wanted us to believe that Miss Trunchbull was very forceful, very tyrannical, very unfeeling or unempathetic towards the students, very destructive, quite scary, malevolent, etc., etc., etc. So all of these bullet points, which we have listed here to do with the connotations of these objects, also could be used to describe Miss Trunchbull. And it's from that that we understand her as being very fierce and pretty unpleasant. So to finish this video off, and you can certainly have a go at writing another 2 paragraphs about this question, I'm going to finish this by giving you an example paragraph along the lines of what you would write, like, for example, in a GCSE for English language. The writer presents Miss Trunchbull as a malevolent individual who acts in a threatening and menacing manner. That's a little introduction. You wouldn't have to keep repeating that for every paragraph. The writer uses a simile and compares her to a tank, which reinforces the manner in which she interacts with her students. Tank has connotations of war and conflict, something that has destructive capabilities because of its power and size. Tanks are almost indestructible. As a result, the writer is applying the same characteristics to Miss Trunchbull, as students bounce off her because they are smaller and weaker. The verb ploughed also suggests she is forceful in the same way a tank could plough into something and crush it. So that is an example there of a paragraph, for example, looking at language analysis, thinking about why a particular phrase has been used. So you could, as I said a minute ago, you could go away and write more of the answer if you wanted to, using this as a guide and the other bits of the video. So going back to where we started then, a connotation is all to do with interpretation. And that's what English is. That's what any subject is to do with language. It's an interpretative subject. You will be assessed essentially on your ability to understand the interpretation of language and understand, I suppose, how language works. So, connotations can be a way that you can unlock that information to extend and expand your answer, in particular for language analysis for GCSE, but it could also be useful for other English courses as well, such as literature, including A level as well. Okay, so thank you for watching. Hopefully that was useful, and speak to you soon.